Hey guys, William here, and in this video, I'm going to discuss bullet velocity and bullet drop based on the caliber of the weapon. I wanted to see if there is any kind of correlation between certain ammo types, and it looks like my assumption was spot on. Caliber does actually matter, and it's not just a tactical decision for ammo reserves. I also discussed the correlation between caliber and damage. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to do a full damage guide in Blackout, but hopefully this will help you make the best decisions when looting weapons. There's definitely some interesting stuff, and I hope you enjoy. So, onto the drop tests. I tried to stay around the exact same location for all of these tests, which is the only thing that makes it difficult. I had to first find these weapons, and then make my way to Nuketown and shoot at this particular rock while positioning my sights towards the top of it. Now this isn't rocket science or foolproof, but it's good enough to show the differences between calibers very clearly. First up, I used the cordite for the 9mm test, and this didn't even touch the rock when my sights were set towards the top of it. I had to fire it a few more times just to be sure, but I honestly wasn't surprised that it didn't even make it to the rock. It had an extreme amount of drop and a very low velocity. Next up, we have the 45 caliber Gks, and it's worth noting that this was actually a 9mm in the Blackout beta. They swapped its caliber with the MX9 for balancing purposes, I assume. The drop in velocity on this is slightly better than the 9mm. Again, this is expected because it's reserved for pistols and SMGs. They aren't meant for long-range weapons. For our third one, we finally get into some longer range potential with the 5.56 ammo. This is found on 3 assault rifles and the 2 burst rifles, and as you can see, it very clearly has a much higher velocity than both the 9mm and the 45 weapons, and the drop is not nearly as severe. Next up is the 7.62 ammo. The drop on this is actually hardly different versus the 5.56 ammo. In fact, I couldn't determine any significant difference, and when I tried to compare the velocity to each other, I kept coming up with a frame difference of 3 to 5, and that was in favor of one or the other. Neither one was definitively faster, or had more noticeable drop. However, if we were to assume that Treyarch is keeping caliber semi-realistic, the 5.56 round should have a faster muzzle velocity and less drop as a result. However, with the limited testing I can do, it's really hard to determine this. So for now, I'm going to say there is either no or negligible difference between these two when it comes to bullet drop and muzzle velocity. Up next, we have our first sniper rifle caliber, the 338. At this particular location, the drop was about half when compared to the 5.56 and 7.62 ammo, and the velocity was about 50 to 60% faster, at least during this particular test. Once again, it's expected of a sniper rifle caliber. The drop is definitely present, but much easier to account for than lower calibers. Finally, we have the massive 50 caliber sniper rifle, and this one has been said to have almost no drop. However, as you can clearly see, without long barrel, it does have a little bit of drop, and this isn't even what I would call an extreme range for a sniper, especially a 50 cal. However, the drop is still pretty small. This weapon is almost always found fully decked out with attachments, which includes long barrel. Its velocity was around 3 frames faster than the 338, but because I had to basically eyeball it with where I was standing, this is pretty insignificant. The biggest advantage here is the bullet drop. I also had thought at first that the 50 cal LMG was actually landing shots a bit slower than the 50 cal sniper. However, a frame-by-frame analysis has shown that it's nearly identical. Definitely inconclusive between those two without some better controlled testing. So from most bullet drop to least bullet drop, we have 9mm, 45, 5.56 and 7.62, 338, and then 50 caliber. So now I want to discuss damage based on caliber, and I'm not going to go full in-depth with all of the numbers for weapons in this video because I've only done brief initial testing. However, there does not seem to be any consistent correlation between caliber and weapon damage when comparing 45 and 9mm, but mostly because they have similar profiles, at least when comparing their initial close-up damage range. When it comes to the other ammo types, there actually does seem to be some correlation, but only when you compare within its weapon category. For instance, the smaller caliber 5.56 assault rifles all deal less damage than the 7.62 assault rifles. That makes sense. This is true for assault rifles, tactical rifles, LMGs, and sniper rifles, at least based on that initial damage range. When you cross categories, however, there isn't any correlation. The 7.62 DMR deals more damage than the 50 caliber LMG. The 5.56 ABR deals more damage per bullet than both 7.62 assault rifles. Oddly enough, that also means that in those categories, smaller calibers have a generally faster rate of fire. Oddly enough, that also means that in those categories, smaller calibers have a generally faster rate of fire, and bigger calibers have a slower rate of fire. The SMG category doesn't really stick to this either, once again, especially with the Spitfire being a 45 with the highest rate of fire in the game. Well, that's going to be the end of this video. I hope you learned something useful that you can use while looting and selecting what weapons you'll take into the final circles. Leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss future videos, and I'll see you next time.